December 2008. Tesla is a couple of days away from bankruptcy. Elon hasn't slept much. He's on a factory floor pacing between stations. His marriage is about to collapse. And SpaceX just blew up its third rocket in a row. He's got 40 million left. Everything that's left he made from PayPal. What is he going to do? He puts all into these two companies. He's doubling down. Peter Thiel said it best. If only one Tesla or SpaceX had succeeded, you might say he's extraordinarily lucky. But the fact that both widely succeeded tells us Elon knows something about risk that the rest of us don't. Most people in his situation probably would back out or just put everything in one, or they would break. But what is he doing? He's putting it all in. I asked myself, why? What's running underneath that lets someone operate like this? Success leaves clues. If you want to accelerate, you model the people who've already done it. The ideas, yes, they're useful. But what I'm after is their software, the mind they actually run, the stuff buried in the subtext, like everything that is subconscious. How do they run their physiology? How do they run their mind? How do they run their body? What are these subconscious and conscious programs that this person is running? So I can model them, can learn from them, and can improve. What you can only see when you really watch all the interviews multiple times, when you meet the person, when you start reading between the lines. I'm obsessed with this. I haven't met Elon, but I'm obsessed with how his thinking patterns form, how emotional patterns lock in, how you can actually change them. I've spent thousands of hours trying to reverse engineer my own mind because at some point I needed to figure out how to operate when everything was falling apart. And now I do that with the greatest minds of human history. Everything I'm breaking down in this show, I'm testing myself. I extract what works best for the greatest winners out there. And I'm using cutting-edge neuroscience, cognitive behavioral techniques, and practices that are thousands of years old to make sense of it. Because the idea is this: your mind is software, and software can be reprogrammed. And the greatest operators, the greatest winners, the greatest people of all time in their field, they aren't just lucky or gifted. They've become their own best software engineers. And most of us never touch that layer. We just run whatever we got installed. And this show is about changing that. So each episode, I dissect one mind through three lenses. First, how they see themselves, their self-views. What's their relationship with themselves? What's their subconscious self-talk? Second, how they see reality. What's their worldview? And what's their God view? What was originally installed in them about the world and reality? Third, how do they respond when stakes are extremely high? How do they respond on an intense emotion? What are the subconscious patterns? How's their nervous system running? What are their emotional protocols? That's the operating system, because these three, they really build every personality. Think about what are the most fundamental drivers of every single action that you take. Your concept and relationship of yourself and the world and your subconscious programs. That's really what operates in personality. And once you can see it with a little bit of repetition, you can actually install it. Quick side note, if you want the best biography breakdowns on the planet, go listen to David Senra's Founder podcast. I learned so much from this guy. I'm obsessed with it. It's incredible. Seriously, go subscribe. David extracts the ideas and the history. He's a master at that. What I'm doing here is extracting the subconscious operating system and installing it into your nervous system live while you listen. Downloading and installing the software of the world's greatest minds directly into your mind. We're going to start with Elon. And whatever you might think about him, put aside all the drama, politics, whatever you heard about him. I'm not focusing on that. And I believe you can learn from anyone, but most from the biggest winners in their field. You don't have to agree with them to learn from them. I focus on his mind. How is he functioning? What can I learn from that? And how can I install these programs into my mind that are useful for me? So let's open the hood. I spent 3 weeks on this episode, 35 hours of research. I read his biographies, studied hours of interviews. I pulled the transcripts apart. I read it over and over again. I treated his mind like I want to digest it. What's the architecture? What's his software? I want to start with a quote from Walter Isaacson's biography that stopped me. Quoting here, "Sometimes Errol," that's his dad, "would make sweeping assertions to his kids that were unconnected to facts, such as insisting that the United States president is considered divine and cannot be criticized. At other times, he would weave fanciful tales that cast himself as either the hero or the victim. All would be asserted with such conviction that Elon and Kimball," that's his brother, "would find themselves questioning their own view of reality." And then Kimball later says, "Can you imagine growing up like this? It was mental torture, and it affects you. You end up asking, what is reality?" And that's a good question. What is reality? That question, most people never have to ask this. We just inherit a model of the world from our caregivers, from society, and we accept it and we build upon it. It's kind of stable enough, right? Elon didn't get this. His father's versions of reality was constantly shifting. Fanciful tales delivered with total conviction. Just imagine if you're really growing up as a kid like that in that environment, what options do you have? You accept instability, you make it your own, you just become unstable, become crazy, or you build your own system to find out what's true. And he built that system, and he still runs on that system. There is a book that saved him. The tool that really helped him build it wasn't really what you expected. From Isaacson here, the science fiction book that most influenced his wonder years was Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and shaped his philosophy. Elon himself found that. The Hitchhiker's Guide helped me out of my existential depression. So the scene was this. They built a supercomputer to answer the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything. And the computer runs for millions of years and finally spits out an answer. And the answer was 42. And everybody got confused and outraged. And then the computer replies, well, definitely that's the answer. I think the problem is you've never actually known what the question is. So Elon took this specific lesson in his words. I took from the book that we need to extend the scope of consciousness so that we are better able to ask the questions. He says, the answers aren't the real part, the questions are. This became really his worldview, that reality is not really given, or there is maybe a given reality, but we have no access, direct access to it. We can just ask better questions to find out more about it. So this iterative approach was already installed there. So it's something to be questioned, tested, probed. And you can see this philosophy embedded even in his companies. Look at Grok, the AI from XAI. His stated mission is a maximum truth-seeking AI. The goal is to deeply understand the true nature of the universe and provide maximum truth-seeking answers. So how does he actually determine what's true? How does he update his box of reality? He uses science as a way of thinking. And I think Carl Sagan put it best. He says, science is a way of thinking much more than it is a body of knowledge. And Elon calls it reasoning from first principle. That's basically what you do when you're a scientist. Here's how he explains it in his own words. I think generally people's thinking processes is too bound by convention or analogy to prior experiences. It's rare that people try to think of something on a first principle basis. They say, well, we do that because it's always been done that way. Or they say, well, we're not going to do it because nobody has ever done that. So it must not be good. But that's just a ridiculous way to think. That's a ridiculous way to think. You have to build up your reasoning from the ground up. From the first principles is the phrase that's used in physics. You look at the fundamentals and construct your reasoning from that. And then you see if you have a conclusion that works or doesn't. And let me add here another quote from Richard Feynman, one of the greatest physicists of the last century. He said, scientific knowledge is a body of statements of varying degree of certainty. Some unsure, some nearly sure, but none absolutely certain. I think he really internalized that. Through this unstable, imagine your kid. You can't trust what your dad says. You get continuously disappointed because he lies to you or he's crazy or whatever. You can't trust that. You fall into it once or twice. I remember my dad was like a walking Wikipedia, and I kept on asking him a lot. I learned so much from him, and I remember vividly that moment when he got something wrong. I was a kid, I was like 5-6 years old, so I repeated one thing I learned from him. And I think it was the explanation about why the sky was blue. And the person I talked to, they said, no, it's not true. It's because the refraction of the sunlight in the atmosphere. And I was like, no. So I researched it, and I realized, oh wow, my dad was wrong. He taught me something wrong. I remember how that broke me. I'm exaggerating here, but I was like, what? And from then on, I started doing my own research. I started reading more. Not that I can compare this with what it must have been for Elon or his brother. Just imagine this happens over and over and over again, but with the most fundamental things. What's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false. Trust. Imagine you cannot trust your own parents. Think about that for a second. What are you going to do? You have to come up with your own stuff. You have to come up with your own reasoning model. What to trust. And I think it's a wonder that he built this. And he's got it so freaking far from that childhood experience. Back to Feynman. Scientific Knowledge is a body of statements of varying degrees of certainty. Some most unsure, some nearly sure, and none absolutely certain. So if you combine those and you get, what you get is you get an iterative approach to reality. You will never have a 100% true picture, but you can become progressively more certain. You just keep on questioning, keep on testing, update your model. So you have this box of reality and you have your box of approximation to reality. And you just try to get better and better in that. I think it's a beautiful model to look at. And this comes from a kid who couldn't trust the information he was given. He had to find a process he could rely on. And first principle thinking is not just a business technique for him. It's literally how he learned to survive. Now here's where his self-view comes in. And this is where it gets, I think, really interesting. So his ex-girlfriend, Grimes, wrote a song about him. I think the most telling line is, he'll always love the game more than he loves me. I think the song was called The Player of Games. He literally loves games. He's passionate about video games. He wrote one and sold it as a kid. He uses them to decompress and sharpen his tactical thinking. But I think more than that, he really sees life itself as a game he is playing. Isaacson's notes on Elon often describe him as a player character in a simulation whose mission is to expand consciousness. There's many interviews with Joe Rogan where he ramps on the simulation theory. He takes it really serious and he contemplates on that, and that gives him perspective. Just think about what that means. Most people are stuck in what I call the character's perspective. Meaning you're inside the game. Imagine a video game, okay? You're inside the game. You're the character. Pull yourself fully into the character. You're fully into that. And you want to survive. You want to win, right? And the stakes feel really ultimate. You're in it, right? You optimize for survival. You optimize for winning. You optimize and going through it, right? But every threat, everything feels kind of existential. And now zoom out. Think of, oh, well, you're just playing. You have the controller in your hand. You're just playing the character. You're the player of the game. And you see on the right side, your life bar, you see the number of lives you've left, some other stats about you, and you have that perspective. And you approach then it with, hey, it's actually fun to play the game. Or I'm actually curious, how can I become a better player? I'm curious, how can I hack the game? How can I improve myself? How can I play better? How can I master the game? And Elon operates from the player perspective. He sees himself playing the game. The stakes are high, but they're not final. You're not trying to survive this turn. You're literally trying to master the game itself. And the character mistakes the game for the whole reality, while the player knows there's a level above it. And this distinction is actually not new. Every major wisdom tradition points to it. Vedanta, in yogic Vedic scriptures, they call it Sakshi, and they point to Atman, the eternal witness. In Buddhism, Buddha calls it Sati, which means more or less pure awareness, observing without entanglement. Even in Taoism, they have something called Wu Wei, which is kind of the effortless observing without interfering, a kind of detached, non-interfering presence. So thousands of years of contemplative practice all point to the same thing, a better operating system to play the game of life. You're not the character, you're not in the game, you're actually the one watching it. So that's player versus character view. And Elon arrives at the same place through video games, through simulation theory, and I think it's just the same thing. And that really enables him to look further ahead than everybody else. This gives him much more degrees of freedom. And I would argue it gives him more joy doing it. And look, I want to give you something practical here. Because this player versus character thing, it's not just philosophy. It's a move you can make in real time. When I catch myself in character mode, freaking out about some deal, some conversation, some drama that feels like life or death, here's what I do. I stop. I look up, literally look up at the ceiling and imagine there's a camera floating above. And I zoom out and I say one line out loud. Do you believe in it? I'm the player. This is just a level. 3 seconds. Changes everything physiologically. Your shoulders drop, your breathing shift, you're back in control. Next time you're in a heated meeting, next time you're spiraling, just look up and remind yourself, do you believe in it? Player versus character. And watch what happens. What I found, if you actually run this for 30 days straight, you rewire your brain. You'll have actually installed something that took Elon decades and video games and existential crisis to build. That's leverage. Small focus shift habit, massive compound effect. There's this game, this mobile strategy game, I think it was an iPhone game. It's called Polytopia. He's even quoted to say, playing Polytopia makes you a better CEO. And he plays it, and he played it. I think he even played it with his brother, and they came up with a set of rules, and they call it Polytopia Life Lessons. So here they are. Number 1, empathy is not an asset. 2, play life like a game. 3, do not fear losing. He says, you will lose, and it will hurt the first 50 times. When you get used to losing, you will play each game with less emotion. You will be more fearless, take more risk. Number 4, be proactive. You will never win unless you take charge of setting the strategy. Number 5, optimize every turn. So in Polytopia, you only get 30 turns. So you need to optimize each one. And Elon's version is, like in Polytopia, you only get a set number of turns in life. If you let a few of them slide, we will never get to Mars. Next one, double down. Put everything back into the game, grow and grow. This is an algorithm that he runs. Look at his 2008 moment. Tesla, SpaceX, both failing. 40 million left, and he puts it all in. That's doubling down. Put everything back into the game. Queen's University friend, Naveed Farouk, came to work with him at Zip2. I think this was his first company. Within 6 weeks, Naveed's wife told him, if you want your friendship to last, this is not for you. So he quit. Later he said, I knew I could either be working with him or be his friend, but not both. And the latter seemed more enjoyable. And Elon's take on that. You're not friends with people on your team. Wanting to be everyone's friend leads you to care too much about the emotion of the individual in front of you rather than caring about the success of the entire enterprise. So that's really, empathy is not an asset. That brings us to the simulation lens. And here's where the self-view and worldview merge into something actually really cool. So Elon and Joe Rogan, we keep the simulation going that are the most interesting to us. So if simulation theory states that we are almost certainly living inside a video game-like simulation right now. Here's why. 40 years ago, we had Pong. These are 2 paddles, a dot, and that was entertainment. And today we have photorealistic 3D worlds. Millions of people playing together. AI characters you can't tell from humans. VR that's already fooling your brain. And that progress is not slowing down. It's actually exponentially exploding. So give it a few more decades, just maybe even a few more years, and we will be able to create artificial realities that are 100% indistinguishable from this one. Every sight, touch, sound, emotion, perfect. Now, once any civilization anywhere reaches that point, and we are basically on that ramp, what they do, they don't run one little simulation and call it a day. They would run billions. The likelihood, maybe trillions. The likelihood that they will run more and more. We already do that. Like, look at Elon. He's doing, in SpaceX, they're doing rocket tests, simulations. They're doing thousands, millions of simulations. Because compute gets cheap, storage gets cheap, and it's fun. It's science, it's art, whatever. So picture this. There's one single base reality. And inside that one base reality, advanced civilizations are running billions and trillions of ancestor simulations. So the total number of real biological beings are tiny. The total number versus the total number of conscious beings inside the simulations is basically infinite. Simple question. Which one are you more likely to be in? One of the few real ones or one of the trillions of simulated ones? The math is pretty brutal. It's 1 in a billions that we are in base reality, meaning that we are the first reality that is not yet simulated. It's you have to win a lottery, the cosmic lottery, 1 trillion times in a row to be real. That's the odds. So it's very likely we are in the sim. So that is kind of the idea behind it. So back to Elon. So this is Elon on Joe Rogan. We keep the simulations going that are the most interesting to us. So if simulation theory is accurate, the simulators will only continue to run the simulations that are most interesting. Therefore, from a Darwinian perspective, the only surviving simulations will be the ones most interesting to us. And in order to avoid getting turned off, the only rule is you must keep it interesting because the boring simulations will be terminated. The most interesting and usually ironic outcome is the most likely, and that's a good predictor for the future. These are his words. So he injects this example of they're running thousands, probably millions of simulations before they do a rocket launch. So They are actually only interested in the interesting ones. What are the interesting ones to them? Well, these are the interesting ones are the critical ones where the rocket might blow off or blows off, where something is not perfect. When everything goes right and smooth, it's kind of boring. That's what he means with boring, right? They shut them off. They only keep them running that are edge cases to learn more. And he thinks in a similar way. The interesting ones, or the usually most ironic outcome ones, are the most likely. And he thinks that's a good predictor for the future. And this is how he looks further ahead than everybody else. It's great, a crazy, I think a genius view of looking at the world. So let's add this together. When you see yourself as a player, you can question the game itself. And when you question the game, you can predict where it's going. In one class in his Queen's University, they used a strategy game in which teams competed in a simulation of growing a business. So the players could decide the prices of the products, the amount spent on advertising, profit, blah, blah. And Musk figured out how to reverse engineer the logic that controlled the simulation so he was able to win every single time. And he applies that same thinking, that zooming out, that observer perspective to actually our reality or our simulation. And he's trying to figure out what are the rules in there. And maybe he figured something out that we haven't. Bringing it back to Peter Thiel. Elon knows something about risk that the rest of us don't. So that's his view. It's a genius concept. I just am fascinated by that way of pulling out and looking from above. And again, it is not a new concept. So before we move to emotional protocols, I want to give you 2 questions. They're questions I ask myself constantly. And after studying Elon, I made them a stable habit. They've changed how I operate. First one, what model are you running that comes from someone else? And how is that model constraining you? I had to sit with this for a long time because I realized so much of what I thought was me was actually just inherited programming from my parents, from society, from people who never questioned their own minds. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It was like finding bugs in my own code that had been running for decades. And the thing is, the more I do this, the better I get at it, because I still, to this day, keep finding new things, new bugs, new inherited programs I didn't know were there. So the more you make this habitual, the better you become at debugging your own code, the faster you can spot it. This question cracked something open in me, and I think it might for you too. So, second question. And this one I use all the time, especially when stakes are high. When I'm in a tough conversation, when I'm about to make a big decision, when I feel the tightness in my chest, I ask myself, am I in the character mode or the player mode right now? Am I trying to survive this or am I trying to master the game? And the way I like to phrase it, my code word is, do you believe in it? Do I believe in this right now? How attached I am? Because if I'm emotionally gripped by it, I'm fully attached, and that's a sign I'm in character mode. That's when I know I need to zoom out. That single question has pulled me out of spirals I would have been stuck in for days. It's so simple, it almost sounds stupid. But when you're in the fire, when everything feels existential, that one prompt can shift your entire physiology in seconds. So here's what I want you to try. This week, this month, whenever you're in high-stakes situations, or even just an emotionally charged one, catch yourself and ask yourself, character or player? Do I believe in it? What helps is if you practice afterwards. Let's say you've been just through a tough time, a tough moment. Look back at it and zoom out and observe what happened. Zoom out. Observe yourself from the outside. Look at the scene like there's a camera floating above you. Watch yourself in that situation. I do this now almost automatically, but it took practice. I did it every single day for at least a month, probably more. And remember, you're training here. You're installing a habit, a habitual way of running your mind and your nervous system. So it takes a bit. It's not instant, but once it clicks, and it will click, you have access to a perspective that most people never touch. Now let's analyze his emotional protocols. Let's look at lens 3. What happens when a threat shows up? How does his operating system respond under pressure? In the most profound depths of human despair, our subconscious becomes visible, not necessarily to us, but those closest to us. That's why the 2008 moment matters so much. That's why I keep coming back to it, because that's when you see what's actually running underneath. During a particularly hellish period of his life in 2008, after the first 3 launches of his SpaceX rockets exploded, and Tesla was about to go bankrupt, he would wake up trashing and recounting to Tallulah Riley, who would become later on his second life, the horrendous things his father had once said. I'd heard him use those phrases himself, she says. It had a profound effect on how he operates. When he recalled these memories, he would zone out and seem to disappear behind his steel-colored eyes. I think he wasn't conscious of how that still affected him, because he thought of it as something in his childhood, Riley says. But he's retained a childlike, almost stunted side. Inside the man, there's still a child, and that child stands in front of his dad. So inside the man, there is a child standing in front of his dad. That line made me stop and think, what is actually going on in his mind? How is he talking to himself? What is he hearing inside? Here's what I think is happening. Elon has an incredibly powerful neuroassociation. For him, pain is this massive existential pain is linked to being ordinary, failing, being seen as worthless by his father. Just imagine what impact that has on you when you're idle. And as a young boy, your father at one point in life always is your idol, tells you this. And so he internalized that, still up to this day. But what he did, he turned that into fuel. He linked that pain to being ordinary, failing, being seen as worthless. And then he linked pleasure to massive impact, massive life-saving, humanity existential impact, linked to epic achievement. And epic achievement in a way almost like that it shuts everyone up, especially his father, the voice of his father. So he has this association, pain to massive pain, existential pain. Like really, he would die if he is becoming ordinary, if he is failing, if he's been seen as worthless. And pleasure links to epic achievements, epic accomplishments, saving humanity. This linking happened in childhood, and it probably got reinforced thousands of times. So in 2008, the pain got triggered at level 10 out of 10. That automatically produced level 10 of motivation in him. So he pictured this picture of failure, his father's voice, and he instantly swapped the picture for, okay, let's zoom in. And he would zone out behind his steel-colored eyes. And I'm wondering what he was doing in his zoning out. And I think I have a hunch of what he's doing there. He was processing. He was focusing. He also built a ferocious identity. I'm the guy who does what others say is impossible. That identity was forged as defense against the shaming father, but is now so total that any threat to his missions feels like ego death. And ego death produces unlimited energy. So this man has linked his survival to solving impossible problems. He turned that into his superpower. And most people link pleasure to comfort. He links pleasure to breaking through when everyone else quits. And he built a system to turn that fear and childhood wounds into an engine that built his relentless, almost inhuman drive. And I'm going to break you down two emotional superpowers that he developed. So the first one is really how he processes fear, and the second one is how he transmutes that pain into motion. And I'm going to tell you how to implement that in your mind. So we all have emotional protocols. These are programs that are running in the background of our nervous system. They're usually so hardwired we don't even notice them. They usually got installed in our early childhood, and sometimes they're identical to the programs of our caregivers, of our parents, and sometimes they're just the opposite direction. You might develop the polar opposite behavior to compensate in a way, right? What were Elon's programs? What is running in his nervous system when everything is on fire? And from everything I studied, there's these two patterns, these two superpowers that stand out. So the core insight that I have is fear is just coming from blur. Fear is just blur and a lack of focus. Most intense fear, anxiety, overwhelm comes from a perceived unknowability. So, when something feels unknown, complex, chaotic, unpredictable, what the brain does, it fills that void with worst case scenarios. And that creates the emotion. The emotion is real, but the threat is pretty much imagined because it's not defined. So you're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to the blur. Think about that for a second. Most of the time when we are afraid of something, we are not actually afraid of the specific defined thing. We are, because we don't know what it is. We are afraid of something we can't see clearly, something we can't predict. And the majority of those emotions might be completely wasted, unwarranted. So, and especially in today's world, look, we face far fewer threatening dangers than any human in history. I think Elon figured this out very early. His superpower and how to combat this is focus. And that's why he stares at the blur until it becomes clear. He just focuses in on it, and he's trying to define it. Here's Elon explaining it in his own way. And this is from Tim Urban's blog series about Elon. When I was a little kid, I was really scared of the dark. But then I came to understand dark just means the absence of photons in the visible wavelength. And then I thought, well, it's really silly to be afraid of lack of photons. And from then on, I wasn't afraid of the dark after that. It's physics, first principle, focus. Focus on what is it, breaking it down to the first principles. He stared at the abyss. He stared at a scary thing until he could define everything. And from that perspective, there was literally nothing left to fear. And he does the same thing with death. Tim Urban asked him if he wasn't afraid of dying. And Elon's response was this: having kids made me more comfortable with dying. Because kids sort of are a bit of you. At least they're half of you. They're half of you at the hardware level. And depending how much time you have with them, they're that percentage of you at the software level. So he's not avoiding the fear. He's literally honing in. He's focusing on in until he can define it. Once it's defined, it's no longer terrifying to him. It's just a set of variables that he now can reason about. And Peter Thiel, one of his early co-founders in PayPal, and he says it's a big theme for him to never have his decisions guided by fear. That was definitely present even when he was a child. To never have his decision guided by fear. It's not because he doesn't feel it, because he refuses to let something that is blurred, something that is not defined, to guide his decisions. And what he's doing, he just zones out and he focuses on it. He goes first principle. He goes straight to the root. By the way, this is also how he runs his companies. He arrives at a factory. They list him all the problems that they have, and he goes from one problem to another and solves it one after another, straight to the source. And that's also how he runs it in his mind. So once the variables are on the table, you change the frame through which you view them. And then you can actually reframe it. So the first part is you focus in on it. This is a two-step protocol here, actually. There's an emotion, like fear. There is a problem you have. What are you going to do? Well, you got to freaking focus on it. You focus in on it. And you basically turn off all the distraction. And he can do that in his mind. He's trained his whole life to do that. Probably from intense childhood experience, but he trained himself to do that. But you can do that as well. You just shut off everything. We have a two-step process. First, there's a problem. There's fear. There is something uncomfortable. Focus on it. Don't distract yourself on it. Focus on it. And then once you understand, you can reframe it. And that's where the power of the reframe comes. Because if you reframe without knowing what you're going to reframe, it doesn't make any sense. So here's Elon on this directly. This was in the beginning of SpaceX. Elon didn't want to build rockets. He actually wanted to purchase them. So his idea was, I just want to inspire humanity to take up again space travel because it's freaking important. So what he did, he thought, okay, well, maybe I just put a greenhouse on Mars and take a picture of it, and that will inspire humanity. So he thought, okay, let's buy some rockets. So he went to Russia and wanted to buy some rockets. The first meeting failed. They even spit on him. They laughed at him. Second meeting, this was right after the second meeting, it failed as well. They just making fun of him, and I think the price was ridiculously high. So he got pissed. And this is now Isaacson's talking about Elon in this moment. It was fortunate that the meetings went badly. It prodded me to think bigger. Rather than merely using a second-hand rocket to put a demonstration greenhouse on Mars, I would conceive a venture that was far more audacious, one of the most audacious of our times, privately building rockets that could launch satellites and then humans into orbit and eventually send them later to Mars. And this is what he then said. I was pretty mad, and when I get mad, I try to reframe the problem. When I get mad, I try to reframe the problem. This is it. And what he did there, he's literally got mad, he zoned out, he focused on it, and then he tried to reframe the problem. And this was the birth, by the way, of his famous idiot index. Basically, he broke down all the parts, base component of a rocket, like the steel, the fuel, like all the base component of a rocket. And he listed the cost in a spreadsheet. And he summed it up. And he compared that cost with the actual cost they offered him when he wanted to buy it. And that difference, that is the idiot index. And with that idiot index, he literally drove down the cost for 1 ton to orbit significantly. So back to his mechanism. So this is where it gets really interesting. When emotions are really intense, when the blur, let's say, is thick, when it's really a tough problem, you need serious computational power. You need to really focus on it. And Elon's mechanism is zoning out. As a kid, he would slip into a trance-like state at school. A teacher would think he's slow, he's kind of a bit retarded, because he'd stare out of the window and he did not respond. But he explains it. If I start to think about something hard, then all my sensory systems turns off. I'm using my brain to compute, not for incoming information. Literally, other kids would weave their arms in his face and get nothing. And his mother talks about it. It's best not to try to break through when he has that vacant stare. And he's not spacing out. He's literally turning off incoming sensory data so he can direct all the processing power to the problem, to the blur, to define the variables. Now if you're thinking, but that's just how his brain is wired. He has Asperger's. I don't believe in pathology. I believe in adaptation through iteration. What looks like a condition is often just an extreme version of something we all have access to. He trained his hundreds, probably thousands of times, but we all can train it too. You see glimpses actually of that, and if you watch interviews about him. This is one interview with Lex Friedman. He asks him, how long does it take for SpaceX to bring a human to Mars? And literally he just pauses. He goes into thinker pose, and there's nothing. There's like half a minute of silence. His eyes just go distant. He's not stalling. He's just computing. And this is his initial response to a lot of things. And then obviously after half a minute, he responds. So he's literally turning off everything else so he can focus in on the problem that is underneath. There's also this image of him sitting on the edge of the bed. Grimes' partner, she slept, and I think he was in the thinker pose sitting on the edge of the bed. And I think after the night, she woke up and she saw him sitting exactly in the same position in the morning again. He was literally zoning out all night and thinking about the problem, focusing on the problem. Here's the exact protocol that I extracted and that I run. When fear hits me, when I can't sleep, it's 3 a.m., my mind is spiraling, and something is undefined, something is pressing on my chest, I try not to distract myself. First, I remind myself, while my mind is spiraling, I become aware because something is unknown. That's it. Unknown equals blur, equals fear, or equals this emotion. Second, if a mind is racing and I cannot focus on it, that can happen, which is a lot of time actually the case. I have to shut it up first. I do this through exercise. Anything that gets me out of the mind, that shuts up my mind, burns off the cortisol, tire out the body, then the mind can settle. So I do something that allows my mind to settle. Third, I sit down idly in the dark, but shutting off all my sensory input, every distraction, and I ask one question on repeat. What is this exactly? What's the core? What is this exactly? What is this exactly? And I keep asking it until there's clarity, until the blur collapses, until I can name the pieces and I can write it actually down on a Post-it note. I realize once the variables are on the table, that means you're focused on it and you're processing the emotion attached to it. And fear is dead. It's not scary anymore. It's just a problem. And problems can be solved. That's the move. 1, check in with your physiology. If you need to calm your mind first, do that. Whatever it takes. Without new input, without distraction. 2, sit down without input and ask, what is this exactly? What's the core? And keep asking until you can list the pieces. Works every single time. And the more you do it, obviously, the faster you get it. It becomes habitual. First times, I'm guessing you can relate. It took me days of distraction before I can actually focus on it. There was something, and I was just distracting myself for days, sometimes weeks even. The more you practice, the better you become. And now it takes me a few minutes, max, sometimes pretty much immediately. And Elon clearly mastered this in business. That's why he can stare down and just zoom out for a minute in an interview. Think of it like this. Think of it like a habit of the mind and the nervous system. After 30 days of consistent practice, you can literally collapse this blur and focus in on it in less than a minute. Your nervous system learns, your mind learns, it becomes automatic. You're training yourself to respond to fear with focus instead of freeze. And that's an installation. So now let's go to superpower number 2. And this one I think is very, very fundamental. Elon was obviously born in adversity. His father was psychologically brutal to him. His childhood in South Africa was harsh, and obviously he needed to find a way to deal with that pain. And his solution was motion, movement. He wants to leave, get out of South Africa, get away, proves his dad wrong, shuts off the voice of his dad in his mind, become valuable. And that urgency, that drive to escape through action became his underlying principle, his underlying operating system. So for him, pain doesn't paralyze him. It literally propels him. His childhood instilled in him an aversion to contentment. He says, adversity shaped me. My pain threshold became very high. Adversity shaped him, not by making him numb to pain, but by teaching him to convert that pain into movement. And it shows up throughout everything what he does. And he calls it maniacal sense of urgency. And literally, he repeats that over and over and over again to his team, in his companies, in the biographies you read about him. Everywhere you just hear that. He uses time fully, regardless of the hour of the day. He acts immediately. Maniacal sense of urgency is our operating principle. Urgency isn't just a productivity hack. Urgency is how he processes pain. Sitting still with pain is unbearable. Moving, acting, building, that's how he escapes it. Actually, that's rather how he uses it. If feared complacency, this is line about Elon's full use of time. It doesn't matter what time, the right time would be right now. So the question becomes, how do you build this capacity if you didn't have his childhood, if you want to develop more urgency? Look at what you're actually doing when you create urgency in your life right now. You focus on the pain of not having the useful thing right now, of not having the outcome right now. If you want to create pain, if you want to be faster, you got to create urgency. So you got to go emotionally, mentally, physically, physiologically there where you feel the pain. Only once you feel it, your brain, your mind tries to avoid it and you go ahead. And Elon trained his mind to habitually focus on the pain and not having what he wants. And probably having his dad screaming, shouting down at him how useless he is. He sees action right now in this moment as the only solution to mitigate his pain. Sitting still is not an option. Motion is the escape. Working every day, all night, all day, in a situation that required me to pull a rabbit out of their hat. Now do it again. Now do it again. This is Elon talking to himself. And now do it again. And now do it again. Repeated extraordinary performance on demand. He even says, I need to shift my mindset away from being in crisis mode, which it has been in for about 14 years now, and arguably most of my life. Imagine, 14 years in this crisis mode. Crisis is motion for him, and motion is how he survives. It's another pattern repeated thoroughly through Isaacson's biography about him. Literally, the importance of having failures. Elon says, your first 50 failures are going to be really painful, and they're going to really hurt. But eventually, over time, you have less emotion. And if you're less emotional about it, you can take more calculated risk. So pain builds tolerance. Tolerance enables more action, and more action builds more tolerance. And this loop reinforces itself. But also, it has a dark side, because when your operating system runs on pain that just converted into motion, you need to need that pain to actually be addicted to it. And that instilled in him an aversion to contentment. And that's Grimes about him. I just don't think he knows how to savor success and smell the flowers. I think he got conditioned in his childhood that life is pain. And Musk agrees. Adversity shaped me. My pain threshold became very high. Life is pain. That's his operating system. It definitely drove him to do extraordinary things. And because of that, we have literally satellite internet almost everywhere on the planet. Because of it, we have probably the best company that is on the best trajectory to get us on Mars. So what you can learn, install from him is, if you want to create urgency, tap into the pain, go into the physiological response of pain and add pleasure to it. Open that gap. That's the shadow side of pain to motion. When you build an operating system that converts adversity into fuel, you become dependent on that adversity. You seek it out. You create it. And that's not just high performance. It is an addiction to the very thing that drives the performance. Urgency, pain tolerance, craving for crisis, they're all the same thing. It's one system. Pain comes in, motion comes out, and the whole thing traces back to a kid in South Africa who needed to escape while standing in front of a dad that told him you're useless. Where does this leave us? Let me recap this operating system through the three lenses. His self-view. He sees himself as a player of games. He's not trapped in a character. He's operating from above, playing for learning, not survival. Take risks the character would never take because the character thinks this is all there is. Again, zooming out. Look at you from the outside. Am I optimizing for survival or am I optimizing for learning and growing? His worldview. Reality is not fixed. We don't have a complete picture of reality. It's questioned. I question my picture of reality to make it iteratively closer to what it is. He builds his own truth detecting system because his father's version of reality couldn't be trusted. And first principle thinking is that system. Start from the ground. Don't accept inherent assumption. Build your own models and update it iteratively. Emotional protocols. Fear, discomfort is just blur. Focus on it until you can define the variables and then you can reframe it. When it's intense, zone into compute mode. Focus, turn off the noise, stare at the problem until it becomes clear, and pain into motion. Don't sit with discomfort, convert it into action. His urgency is not a tactic, it's a survival mechanism that turned into an operating system. These three pieces connect. When you see yourself as a player, you can question the game itself. When you question the game, you can define the blur by focus instead of being frozen by it. When you define the blur, you can reframe it, and when you reframe it, pain becomes fuel instead of paralysis. One more thing before we go into the guided practice. This is what I do. This is really what I took away from studying Elon. I do this especially before high stakes moments, but I actually do it all the times, just in between, before conversations, before I make big bets, whatever. Here are the three protocols. 1. Swap from character into player. My prompt for this is simple. I ask myself, do you believe in it? Referring to whatever is bothering me, whatever is in front of me. If I'm emotionally agitated, the answer is usually yes. I'm trapped in character mode. So I zoom out, look up, I remind myself I'm the player, and this is just a level. And this instantly changes my physiology. 2. Defining the blur. I ask myself, what's the unknown? And I focus on it until it becomes clear. Every day, I schedule 30 minutes and just sit with whatever is unknown. No distraction, just compute until this blur collapses into what it actually is and to the problems that I can solve. 3. I open the gap. This is the motivation. When I'm slow, when I need a kick in the ass, I go there. I feel the worst case and I feel it viscerally in the body. I create the pain and I let the urgency build. And then I flip to the best case. I feel the pleasure, the momentum, and I let both of these forces drive me into motion. Pain pushes, pleasure pulls. I convert it into action. These are not affirmations. They are mental programs, habitual ways to use your attention and your physiology, habitual ways to focus and run your body. And this is an operating system compressed into 3 moves. Take them if they serve you, change them, make your own version of it, but have something. Have a protocol you can run when everything is on fire, when you need it. The more you practice, the more accessible it is when you need it. And if you implement these 3 moves consistently for 30 days, they stop being techniques, they become habits. They become identity, and they become the voice in your head that shows up automatically whenever you need it. Look, this is not about becoming Elon. Some of the most successful winners on the planet have figured out universal protocols for how to think, how to process fear, how to create urgency, and much more. There are patterns that work regardless of who you are or what you're building. If you want to operate at your highest level, if you want to become the best version of yourself in business and life, you can extract them, you can test them, you can run them yourself. And that's the whole point of this show. Your mind is software, and software can be reprogrammed. So what would you build if you had full control over the operating system running your mind?
This is a guided practice that helps you download Elon's mindset of player versus character. It's a powerful mindset that gives you perspective whenever you need it, whenever you are trying to solve a problem that's hard to solve, whenever you don't see a way out, whenever you struggle, whenever you face a challenge. This mindset is extremely important. And the goal is to wire that into your subconscious. So in the moments, whenever you face a challenging situation, you can run this script, this program. So get ready. Take 15 minutes where you can't be disturbed. Turn off all notifications, phone on airplane mode, block out a time in your calendar, close your doors, Be just for yourself. And allow yourself to go deep. Settle in. Close your eyes. You can lay down or sit up straight. I encourage you to align your spine to avoid any blockage in the body. And just pay attention to the body for a few moments. Become aware of your breath coming in through your nostrils, filling up your diaphragm, your chest, and gently out of your chest and diaphragm, and feel the full sensation of the exhale. Let's do a few of those. Just really arrive in the body. Because what we are doing now is we're going beyond the thinking. You want to go into your subconscious mind. And whenever their thoughts come, just label them as thoughts. Come back to your breath. That's all you got to do now. Breathe a few breaths, following the breath rhythm. And let's do a little body scan. Let's start with your forehead, and you relax all the muscles in your forehead. You really feel and experience melting your whole forehead down, your whole head down, your cheeks. It's like a light beam that hits your forehead, top of your head, slowly goes down throughout your whole body. And every body part it hits is melting. And feel that melting sensation. Now it hits your cheeks, your chin, throat, shoulders, arms, forearms, hands. It's melting more and more of your way, your chest, upper back, stomach, pelvis, upper legs, knees. It's melting more and more away, and you go deeper and deeper into the body. Relax more and more. Your thinking mind fries less and less. Now you're at your feet, and your whole body now is completely melted away, and you're just in this empty space. Pure presence, pure being, thoughtlessness. And whenever a thought comes, it's like ripples in the water that come and go. You've been playing a character your whole life. Your name, your history, your personality, all the emotionality, all the drama. Observe that character. Just look at you from the outside. See yourself and visualize yourself in your day-to-day without getting attached to it. Just see your day in your mind's eye from an observer perspective, from bird's eye view, how you go through your day, your interactions, your work, business, even you in high-stakes situations, negotiating, closing, building. Just observe your movements. You just notice and watching that character. Who is watching that character? The character thinks it's you. It believes its own storyline. It gets stressed from that negotiation, from that deal that didn't turn out the way the character wanted, about the quest. Be angry when hit, proud when winning. That's a character. But you, the player, you're sitting back and you're observing. You might have your controllers in hand and you're aware of the whole screen. You're aware of what's happening. The character can't see the player, can't turn around to spot you. He is too busy playing the game. But you're here, and you've always been here. Notice your thoughts right now, or in that situations that you're seeing from above. You can listen into the characters in a monologue. Am I doing this right? I wonder if, that's interesting. That's your NPC dialogue. The character talking to itself. And you can sense that pull towards getting sucked into that, what you're hearing. But you can also just zoom out again and notice who is hearing it. Just hear it come and go. Who is reading the subtitles? It's not the character, the player. The characters having emotions, maybe frustration, maybe curiosity. You're able to watch these emotions. You even have an emotional meter on the side of the screen. Rise and fall. You have a health bar, maybe a stress bar, all of it. The player is not stressed. The player is aware of stress that's happening in the game. Feel the difference. That's the shift. The character thinks it's mortal. It has to achieve things, solve problems, win, or just survive. The player is complete, can't die, was here before this game loaded, and will be here after it closes. The character's survival means nothing to the player. The player is just playing, strives towards winning, but without emotionality. He sees every round as an iteration to become better and playing. Every worry you have, that's a character level problem. Will I succeed? Will this work out? Am I good enough? What if it goes wrong? Player doesn't worry. He can't lose. He literally cannot lose. Because the player is not in the game. The player is playing the game. Even Buddha taught that shift. Stop identifying as the character. Recognize yourself as the player. You're not abandoning the character, still making moves. But now, you know that's not what you are. You are what's holding the controller, what's aware of the whole thing. When the character fails, the player is fine. When the character succeeds, the player is fine. It's just one iteration. The player's state doesn't change based on what happens on the screen. That's freedom. That's what you're looking for. And you have it all along. You just sometimes forget this perspective. And the more you practice this perspective, the easier it comes and the more natural it comes to you, especially in high stakes situations. Right now, playing this character, who is playing? Don't think about it. Look directly. Ask yourself, what's aware of the character, the thoughts, the room, this moment? That. You are that. The player, not the plate. Feel that awareness, this experience. Take it in. Stay as that when you move. The character will keep doing character things, but you'll know from now on it's just a game. And that changes everything. It gives you freedom. Stay with his awareness as long as you can. The longer you stay in this, the more aware of it you become. The deeper you code it into your software. Bring your attention to your breath. Observe your breath. Now bring your attention back to your hands and fingers, feet and toes. Be aware of the character and observe it. And gently, at your own pace, respawn back into the character while keeping the player awareness. When you're ready, you can come fully back and open your eyes.